Pine Tree Pulse. From the county to down east Maine. From Casco Bay to Mount Katahdin. We keep our fingers on the pulse of what's happening in Maine and across the nation. Brought to you by the Maine Policy Institute. Free markets, free people. Pine Tree Pulse begins now.
Well, we are back for yet another candidate conversation, the Pine Tree Pulse podcast. Very much pleased to welcome into the program today Jonathan Bush, who is a candidate for governor on the Republican side of the aisle. One of, I think, 9 of you guys now.
It's only 9?
Yeah, I was expecting maybe double digits. But
whenever I'm raising money, people say, how many are in the race? And I said, well, I know there's like 9 guys not in the race.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
There was a long list of people that were thinking about it that never did it, right?
Yeah.
But you're in. And you just, we'll talk about this, I'm sure, while we're chatting, but you just posted a very strong fundraising number. So obviously the campaign's
historic record in Maine.
Kicking off pretty well. So we wanted to have a conversation about what you'd actually do if you were governor.
God
and the policies
forbid.
that you care about and matter to you. And so I have Harris Van Pate here with me to chat a little bit over these issues. So I guess, first of all, welcome. It's nice to have you here.
I love it. Thank you very much for having me. I've been looking forward to this since, I don't remember when you came over for lunch.
Oh, God, it was a while ago.
Years ago. Yeah.
I said, hey, do you want to do the podcast?
I said yes.
When the
And
time
finally,
comes, here it is.
Probably best that we waited until people were starting to begin to glimmer their thinking on the governor's race. We're at least in the same year as the election now.
Yeah, right. It's actually happening in 2026. Actually, it's a decent place to start, right? I think now people are paying attention. I know you guys started to do some forums.
The very first caucus
Yep.
was in Belgrade on Saturday, and I think most of the candidates were there. The good crowd. I think there were about 90 people in the room, and, they were paying attention. Shh, he's talking, Yeah. You only had 5 minutes, so it wasn't so terribly much you could say, but it was legit. It was like, okay, this is how it begins.
Well, I have to imagine one of the first things that you talk to people about or you're asked about is obviously your famous last name. I mean, this is not,
sure.
Something that's a surprise to people. But having talked to a number of folks inside kind of the voting universe for this primary, it seems to me to be both a gift and a curse. Tell me a little bit about this.
I mean, well, you get the obvious headwind, that this is a pretty blue state, getting bluer. One of the reasons I'm running is I think it's getting troublingly blue, and that even blue people are a little dismayed at what they've created here with sort of bordering on socialism. But the other thing is, of course, you're being carried along by forces larger than you, and you're not your own person. And so I've had to sort of convince people that I will have to, and I think I'm doing okay so far. It's early days that, hey, look, I started a company in my basement. It brought 1,000 jobs to me, and there were no Bushes involved in that. My entire career has been in the economy and in healthcare, not in politics or finance. And so if I can get my story out there, when I get my story out there, oh, well, that's good. And then you get a tailwind, which is moral character. People in Maine still view the Bush family as a favorable moral character family. 70% of Mainers view either favorably or strongly favorably the Bush family names in terms of their character and contribution to Maine. And I certainly, I feel exactly that way. I feel like I'm obviously, there's no refunds, but I'm thrilled to have been a little Bush kid growing up with the moral character of Gagnon Bush, born in Kennebunkport in 1900, setting the tone for all of those Bushes, and the notion of the little bell. Everybody knows what the little bell means, which is when you start to talk yourself into, convince yourself that something you shouldn't do is actually okay to do. There's a little bell that rings in the back of your head, and if you listen to the little bell, you'll do well, and if you don't, you'll live a life of regret. And I think that's a wonderful heritage to be carrying into politics these days. And one of the reasons why I am running for governor is that I feel like a little more little bell here and there might be a good idea. So I would say net, it's a tie so far. I had some unfair tailwinds by being a Bush and some unfair headwinds, just like everybody on everything. And I would say net is not going to it's not going to be the reason I lose, and it probably won't be the reason I win.
Yeah. Well, in the end, you're going to be judged on who you are.
Yeah. In the end, luckily I've raised enough money that you'll know me.
Yeah, right.
You know.
It's not going to have any shortage of campaign ads this season, that's for sure. Well, for those who don't know you, I mean, outside of the last name itself, you've had a very interesting career in the private sector, which you just alluded to.
Yeah.
I think perhaps the first thing that I would ask you about, I suppose that the audience would be interested in, would be the story of Jonathan Bush and sort of how you got to where you are now, what you did in the private sector, and why you think that qualifies you for running the state.
Of course, the little Bush bell's going off now. Don't talk about yourself too much. Don't talk. How did the team do? I don't want to know how you did. So I'm a father of 7. I'm an entrepreneur. My very first job was a weeding yard work company that I started myself at 15. I obviously started athenahealth, which became a big company in my basement, and grew it to 1,000 jobs in Belfast, Maine, and many other jobs around the country in healthcare, automating doctors' offices. Entrepreneur. I'm a veteran. I joined Operation Desert Storm the day it began in, what was that,
1991.
91, January of 91, January 15th of 91. I signed up on January 15th of 91 at the Middletown, Connecticut Army Recruiter as a combat medic. I had already worked as a paramedic in New Orleans. I drove an ambulance from 6 at night to 6 in the morning. That was my first job in healthcare. Never less than 2 gunshot wounds a night, every night in New Orleans. At that time, it was the most violent city in the United States.
Still up there.
It's up there.
Yeah.
It became a lot less violent when Katrina came and sort of flushed it, but they're building back. But what else about me? Entrepreneur, veteran.
Well, you mentioned Athena, right? Which is obviously a pretty big part of your story.
Life. Big part of my story.
And I think that's a perfect place to talk about a little bit how you learned to build and construct and what works and doesn't work in the private sector and specifically in Maine.
I'm drawn to fires and messes. I love fires and messes, partly because of insecurity, because I had all these gorgeous older cousins that were so competent and capable. I wanted to be okay, so I needed to take something that was so messed up that even I could make an improvement. And healthcare was very much you could take a dump on your desk and something somehow would get better somewhere because of it. I mean, it's
quite a pool to jump in.
It's really, and driving an ambulance, I really saw it. I saw, you start in someone's home and then you move them through this healthcare system, and the amount of waste and duplication and confusion and adverse incentives, just the irrational behavior that is necessary to make it work overall, even though there are moments of marvel at our healthcare system. One of which, by the way, is if you get hurt in the world, anywhere in the world, you want to be hurt in this country. If you're hit by a bus or you're shot or you're, one of my best friend's child was hit by a car in Brooklyn, Maine, middle of nowhere. And out of the sky comes MedFlight. There's just no way that someone that rural, and that isolated with a rotary phone, and she's fine. She's great. She just had a baby. The miracle of our break-fix system is extraordinary, but there is no connection. The longitudinal, holistic system is a total disaster. Which is particularly problematic in Maine, which is a rural state and has enormous opportunities for improvement, many of which are illegal here, which is hilarious. And we'll get to that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But my experience of driving an ambulance made me think, geez, I think I could make something really a lot better here because it's really bad. In fact, as a kid, I thought maybe I'll start an ambulance company, but my ambulance company will actually treat you rather than transport you. Because 90% of the transports that I did, I could have just treated. I had them treated by the time they get to, but they still had to sit for 6 hours and get $6,000 bill for the emergency room, and they were fine when I got them there. And I thought, hold on here. These ambulances are vastly lower overhead, vastly more convenient to chronically ill people. Treatment centers as well as transportation vehicles. And so I got into that, and I found it was illegal and it was too hard. But found my way to the same idea, which is instead of paramedicine, midwifery care. And athenahealth was originally Athena Women's Health. And the whole idea was to take people who were pregnant but not sick. It turns out you can be pregnant and not sick, and give them a better experience of care at a lower cost with midwives. And then the doctors would be available if you became sick. The doctors were therefore better doctors because they saw more pathology. The cost was lower because midwives make less. And the experience was better because the culture of midwifery is more about vibe with woman. It's more woman-centric and less disease-centric. It's nicer. So that's how Athena got started, Athena Women's Health. Athena was this, what was she, the goddess of prudence and wisdom, of technology of war or whatever, got the Athenians to be able to stay still and stop traveling around for their food. That's how it got started. And then when we tried to operate it, we found out we couldn't get our claims paid and there were too many rules. And so we ended up building a little website just to keep track of the mess across our offices. And then all the doctors in town were like, hey, can I hate your midwives and I don't like you undercutting the doctors that are in my golf club, but can I use that system you've got with the website that keeps track of all the rules? And so after a while we went, oh, wait a minute. We bumped into the right thing. And then we switched and we became essentially the first industrial use of the internet in healthcare, probably the second anywhere as a read-write industrial tool. Before that, it was journals, read only, you download things from the internet, pictures of a certain type, mostly in the beginning, which caused the bandwidth to improve. So, who knew how we would get our improvements. But now, read-write internet applications are common. It's almost uncommon, except in healthcare, ironically. It's uncommon to have a client server setup anymore, anywhere. But Athena was one of the first. And before there was even reliable internet. And we had like an internet department that would have to set up the internet at your doctor's office for you because you didn't have it at the time. And it grew like wildfire. It grew from, the one practice that we had our birth center at to 5 or 6 women's health practices, to primary care practices, to eventually 1 in every 5 visits to the doctor in the United States today happens on AthenaNet somewhere. So almost I'm sure all of us have a record in AthenaNet somewhere. And that's that journey from, 2 friends to 6 friends to in the split level ranch, dreaming of, I had a Wagoneer, a Jeep Wagoneer, and we called it Athena One, like it was our corporate aircraft. We would go to have a corporate retreat at, some lake somewhere. Like, we should take Athena One. And everyone would get in the back and go have a retreat. And then it grew to where we literally did have an Athena One, 2 of them, and a real infrastructure. And of course, a wonderful story of Maine, where MBNA got bought, closed down. It was just like a bomb went off, and just
I used to work for MBNA briefly.
Did
college.
you?
Yeah.
I mean, many.
I was one of those.
Many did. I mean, they were call centers all over the state.
Guys,
yeah, it was you could go in, make your own hours, kind of thing,
Yep.
And good pay and benefits. And when they disappeared, I said, "Wow, there's an opportunity here," because we were not scaling as fast and as well as we needed to. And my experience of Maine all through childhood is we are a resilient, flexible crowd. The tree falls in our driveway. It's too hot one month and then it's too cold the next. There is a flexibility built into childhood in Maine that allows you to ride economic bumps just as well as natural ones. And that proved true. So as we grew that operation in Belfast, we were able to hire someone and have them do, over a course of a 10-year career, 10 different jobs. Learn this one, and then eventually, while running that, be in training for the next and the next, which allowed the company to be automating and getting more efficient, but not rolling over people. In fact, at the peak, all new hires to Athena nationwide had to come and live for a week in Northport, Maine, at Point Lookout. Lived in cabins, did the ropes course, went around in the woods and learned about the resilience and flexibility of Maine work as a way of becoming a corporate citizen at our company. So Athena's soul had a lot of what my childhood in Mid-Coast Maine, my first job out there on North Haven Island, taught me as part of the playbook for every employee everywhere. And then a critical part of my biography is I was fired from this company.
So I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, we got to get to it.
And before you answer the question, I do want to give you a pretty significant compliment. I when you announced you were running, I got the media packet and the, hey, guess what? I'm running for governor stuff. And you directly confronted all this. Like everything, it's almost as though you said to yourself, look, I know they're going to say all this stuff about me. I might as well. Talk to you about it and have answers for it and whatnot.
Well, so, I also think one of the things that made me run, because I have a very nice life, I was really enjoying. I do enjoy life now too, but I was sort of happily not retired, but on to my next venture, and things were going very well. But there's so much lying. It's sort of normalized now in politics. Maybe it always was, but I just, saw politics through my Uncle George, who was just not much of a liar.
I think it always was, but there's so many more opportunities to amplify it now.
It could be that. It could, but to me, it felt like what in the hell is going on here? And so I decided that A, I would run, and B, that I would just be radically honest all the time. And that, if all the warts of my past wipe me out, great, but maybe they're a superpower waiting to happen. Maybe everybody's got warts, and being candid about them makes it possible for other people to be candid about it, which makes it possible for a state government to be candid, which makes it harder for fraud to grow because you don't have so much normalization of hazy, vague dishonesty. So I'm that's a long way of saying I was fired.
Yeah, right. Well, do you want to tell the circumstances of the story?
Look, we had the stock was flat for a couple of years. We went IPO'd at maybe $500 million, and we were at $1 billion within a week, and we got as high as $8 billion. Company growing very, very quickly. And then for a while there, we didn't grow because people had assumed that these big mega deals would keep coming. We grew a lot, 20% a year, but not 40 kind of thing. And I was just assuming the stock price would catch up eventually. I was a little funny about it, like when are you Wall Street people going to figure it out, instead of being terrified, oh my God, my stock is flat. And sure enough, eventually an activist investor who makes his life finding flat stocks and forcing sales to jack the stock up got me in the radar. And they did their playbook. They do 15 of such plays a year. And I was one of them. And so they bought a chunk of the stock by surprise on a dip when we had to restate our earnings. And then they basically launched it's usually about a 2-year process campaign of getting the CEO discredited, fired, and the company sold. And it worked. They went after, had detectives follow me around. They, had trolls try to friend me on social media, attractive women with little side, conversations trying to, and you never know, was that them? Was that me? But they sure did spike in my life all of a sudden. And then eventually some detective went to the Cambridge courthouse where I was divorced and got all of the accusations my ex-wife had made during a very difficult divorce, and got it into the London Daily Mail, which then made it shareable by all the other news networks that had refused to publish those things. And it was a very tough situation because I wanted to fight for the shareholder, but I didn't want to go back and fight with my former wife, with whom we had we were now 15 years into raising children together as a divorced couple. And my children knew nothing of the divorce and all the various things that went into it. So I just decided, listen, I'm not you got me. I'm not going to respond
The
to
jig is
these
up,
things. Yeah, I can't choose winning this activist battle over, dragging my family, my marvelous ex-wife, who has been a great partner and is a supporter of the campaign. Just got a donation from her actually the other day. I was like, that's so great. So there was nothing I could do. Nothing I chose to do. So I got fired. The company got bought by the activist, who then flipped it 3 years later for 3 times the money, and now it's owned by private equity people, and they make lots of money. And God bless them. But that was the biggest trauma in my life, was the divorce, and the second biggest was having it used against me on my
living through
company.
it again, right?
Yeah, literally reliving it, but this time
Yeah.
you can't say anything. And of course, why then would I run for governor and have it dragged through a third time?
No, third
But
time's a charm, right?
I feel like this time I got it right. That I'm not the only guy who's had a tough divorce, that people can see through nonsense. And it's been healing, actually, for the kids and for my former wife and me, now that we're distant from it enough, and we're able to have it discussed, even discussed inaccurately or with bravado, as if somebody knows what the hell they're talking about. It's such an intimate thing, without it hurting us. So it didn't kill us, and so it's made us stronger. And that's a useful public service tool, because the governor, runs the legal criminal justice system, and that's where people end up when things go terribly wrong, surprisingly wrong. And that's a place for compassion as well as stability and consistency. And I hope it ends up being a useful part of my bio in public service.
So obviously I want to talk mostly about policy, and
Let's get to it.
What you might do as governor, and also the differences between you and some of these other candidates that are running too, because I think that's part of a useful conversation to have as well. Because while I think many of you are very related to each other on ideas, there are important differences, and we can talk about some of that stuff too.
Yep.
So Harris, you can jump in any time here, but I'll ask the first one really. I mean, you have decided to run for governor at a time when you have Janet Mills having been there for 8 years. And during that 8 years, you had a state Senate and a state House that were also Democratic the entire time.
Yeah.
So really there's been no Republican or conservative policy making of note.
Really, really stunning.
So interestingly, they've gotten everything they wanted, right?
Mm-hmm.
What, in your view, is the outcome? As you evaluate what you've seen in this last 8 years.
You guys
or so?
probably have I think it was you who sent me the numbers. Was it basically a doubling of the, a 2Xing? I don't think the state 2X'd. Maybe the state was a tie. Maybe it was neutral. Maybe it grew 1 or 2%. And the state budget doubled. That is shock and awe, to use a Bush phrase. So I think that's the biggest thing, is that not just the 2Xing in general, but the expansion of the number of agencies and commissioners and policies and laws. 3,337 of the tens of thousands that were proposed made it through and are codified in law in a state of 1.3, 1.4 million people. So that load, that coefficient of drag on freedom, on autonomy, but also on the economy and on other businesses, either people in this country, in this state with a business that starts to work, or people outside of this state looking for states to go. That is just, we have been turned into a no-fly zone. So we've dramatically increased our load, thinking that the federal government would pay it forever, the extra load that we added to ourselves. And guess what? We're already at the end of that gravy train. You're seeing it happen now. But also just a coefficient of economic drag added, dollars aside, that are poisonous. And I think while in parts of southern Maine, the cruise ship revenue and the restaurant crowd and the Zoomers kind of allows it to be obscured. If you peel back just that one little crust, this is a state in real dismay. There's real despair. 2 towns this last quarter voted to disband. Schools closing, hospitals closing. obviously we're at the tail end of a long line of mills closing. That is sort of all rolled up into kind of, this is what you get when you do that. We are at the point of a teachable moment. This is something that even centrists and Democrats are going, oh, geez, what have I done? This isn't what I
say
meant.
it frequently, but like every metric you would ever track.
Literally.
Is
I mean,
worse,
my speech,
right?
I'm Jonathan Bush, I'm a father, a veteran, blah, blah, blah. Maine's at the top of every list you don't want to be on, and the bottom of every list you want to top. I mean, that is my intro line. And there are so many such lists. Tax load, electric bill load, cost of housing per square foot, the trend of all of these, just the upticks in them, the size of the uptick, our education system, the percentage of kids who can read in fourth grade at fourth grade level. These are numbers that are mind-blowingly bad and have been trending that way over this 8-year period in a consistent way. The number of employees of the schools, the number of the kids in the schools, the scores of the kids, everything is like a comic strip. It's a Dilbert show, an animated disaster.
I mean, you've talked about a lot of lists, and I mean, you're right that there is basically every single policy area, every single statistic that Maine is falling behind on. And what's arguably made it even worse is the siren song of New Hampshire right next door.
Right next door. And there's literally a colony of Mainers right over the bridge.
Oh, they're refugees. Yeah.
They're refugees waiting for the tax code to change. As soon as a guy does well, he's like, huh? Goes across.
Yeah.
Still got his boat. It's tied up somewhere in Portsmouth or whatever.
And if they're not there, they're in I was just down in Florida, and
southern Maine.
There's like a diaspora down there.
Unbelievable.
It's ridiculous.
No, it's and I talk to people that are up here, 179 days or whatever, so they can't pay taxes here.
Yep.
And they're like, they're not asking for, zero taxes. They're just asking for not the fourth worst in the country, which is why I think as a policy matter, we should sort of tick through the food chain. But the first thing we must do is the opening shot should be a tax cut, $1 billion tax cut, $2,000 per family. So it's a good stimulus. If you can't get an Athena to open in every single town, you can sort of instantly create for every working family a lift. And it sort of makes you pregnant with the problem of where you're spending this money. And so you have an urgency to do that audit and to bring people in. Luckily, if you analyze, thanks to a lot of the data that you guys have shared, the amount of loose cash on our balance sheet.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot of cash slopping around. I mean, talk about ripe for an activist investor.
Yeah.
I was focusing on growth instead of profit. This state, the cash is everywhere. You need a leaf blower to get through the room. So you could actually run upside down for a while just to flush the cash back to the owners of it, which are the Mainers.
Harris has been working on a really deep dive into the state budget and sort of like trying to sort of hit the reset button on it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I have been blown away and shocked by, I hate to say how easy it is. Maybe that's not the right way of putting it, but just how much fat is on there to trim.
Yes.
I mean, there really is.
Yeah.
I don't know, Harris, you basically took the last LePage budget as a baseline and kind of built from there, but you even still keep things like Medicaid expansion in there.
Yeah, even with, keeping Medicaid expansion, but shifting to what a lot of other states have done, so, relying on a mixture of private providers, et cetera, you can cut a lot of money.
I mean, he was getting the budget down to like $9 billion or lower.
8 to 9,
yeah. I mean, and that's without a lot of work.
I think that's that's why I'm running. I think that Maine, and by the way, then you hit your groove and people start to keep their businesses here rather than move them out when they start to work. And the economy grows, but maybe we're back to 12 billion, but on 2 million people. There's so much room, and it doesn't have to be complicated. Simple's probably better because this change is going to be jarring to some. So keeping it really simple and clear so it's easy for people to absorb is a key element to this. But yeah, that'd be the first thing. And like as you already know, as you clearly studied, you have a multi-year shock absorber on getting it paid for, even before fiscal changes, which is just loose cash that doesn't belong there lying around Augusta.
Well, let's not forget the rainy day fund and everything. Maine is currently sitting on
1.3
over
there.
$1 billion that
But if you go through the rest of the balance sheet, there's cash everywhere that should be that should be tagged as rainy day fund. But it's like your cap, your legal cap of the rainy day fund is 1.3. So they're like, oh, well, this is just in case of payables, and this is, there's just
gymnastics she went through to kind of do that.
Oh my lordy,
were something to watch.
And they're making another rainy day fund in case Trump defunds Medicaid too. So they're just further expanding it. There's a bill up this session to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think so. First thing you do that, and now you're at least not such a violent no-fly zone. So obviously a standout problem compared to other states, right? Now it's like, well, you're not going to gain so much by leaving Maine for the taxes. It might be a little, but not so much. And then you start working your way down through. I think probably we should go to healthcare next, even though in the short term it's not as direct a hit on us. It is on the state budget. It's a hit on the state economy, because if you're not one of the 450,000 people on Medicaid, because we've crowded out the commercial market so dramatically by putting everybody on Medicaid,
surprised we still have
working
one,
people on
honestly.
Medicaid, the rates on the people left are so high. They make Mass General look like a discount community clinic. I mean, the prices.
Actually, Mass General is a discount community clinic with the amount of people that are sent there by their health plans now. A lot of these things that have been designed
honestly,
to actually save a buck by going down
exactly,
there. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, and there's Leahy. I mean, there's much there. That is a playbook, by the way. But it's also the case that we have laws in Maine that forbid doctors from opening alternatives. We have this thing called certificate of need law. And guess who decides if you need it? The people who have it.
Yeah.
It's like is it Orwell or Kafka or the Soviet Union? No, we've decided there's no shortage of the thing that only I sell.
Let's
Amazing.
allow
guys and dolls. I know which dots the dice have. But that's a thing that is, I think there may be like 2 or 3 other states that still have this. But this is a socialist construct that's been disproven, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of times over, and we still do it. And guess what? We have no biodiversity in our healthcare market. You have health systems closing, doctors not opening alternatives. You're going slowly down to basically a state monopoly with Maine Health. Wonderful group, wonderful docs, wonderful leadership. Not complaining about them, but they'll be much better in a fertile ecosystem, in a marketplace, which we will easily have if we stop, A, driving everybody onto Medicaid so that the commercial market is shrinking every year, and B, preventing doctors and other providers from offering their own lower cost alternatives. When you attach the overhead of a tertiary medical center health system to anything, I mean, a Diet Coke, inclusive of its allocated overhead at Maine Med, the correct price is probably $13. Everything you do in there, if you include its overhead allocation, is 2-3x what it would be if it was physician owned, if it was community owned. Community paramedicine. We have all these town fire departments suffocating all the money from the healthcare treatment that they deal with by transporting people goes to the hospital. It could be staying in that town. They have the equipment and the training to treat people locally. It's vastly better for readiness, for availability to treat the next person. If your one paramedic is gone for 2 hours and the second person gets sick, who treats them? Dramatic change in the cost of care that comes from community paramedicine and telemedicine, also not allowed under the Medicaid system. All of these things could be taken on in short order and dramatically change the availability of care, the convenience of care, the quality of care, and yes, the cost of care.
And it's interesting you say all this because you do not typically see or hear Republicans talking about healthcare as
No.
an issue. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is I don't think that they understand it very well. Obviously, your background.
And they see red because the state's half involved, and so
they might glom onto like Medicaid and
right.
Medicaid expansion, things like that. But when it comes to like reform ideas, it's not a lot there. But the other reason too is that so much of it's dictated by foreign policy, or excuse me, not foreign policy, federal policy.
That's right.
You have
both ERISA law on the commercial side,
Right.
but then Medicaid on the state side.
and so much of that basically tells states how they have
Yep.
to operate in the healthcare market.
Yep.
How do you deal with that as governor? I mean,
Well,
you can
one
get
of the
around
nice
it,
things
or-
about the first half of this term is that we have a White House and a CMS, Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, which is the government coffers for healthcare, that want states to take control, that want states to pull the money out of Washington and run it. So you can get today from CMS what they call a Medicaid block grant, where you say, I'm going to run the system differently. Just give me the money you would have run through my system, and I'll run it differently. And if you promise to study your results and share what you're doing, they'll give you that. And when you get that, you can do things like say, you don't go to the emergency room unless you have a primary care doctor, and you can use a virtual primary care doctor. If everybody in Maine had a virtual primary care doctor, it would cost us next to nothing, and the amount of use of our emergency rooms would drop in half. And people's, health stat, the numbers, everything associate. Remember, this is a nation whose primary driver of cost are chronic diseases, and chronic diseases are primarily the things you can do about them are primarily social. And so the ability to have a primary care doctor that you can talk to often, which almost no one in Maine has, dramatically changes both your outcomes, but also your spend for those chronic diseases, which are 80% of all the dollars on healthcare are, diabetes, heart disease, cancer is now a chronic disease because we can treat it, we can keep it going so long. All of those change dramatically if you can have a virtual, and we're a rural state. The idea you got to drive 3 hours to go wait in line for 3 hours at Maine Med in order to spend $10,000 for something that your virtual primary care doctor could have helped you with 10 check-ins over 10 days at home and at work, on the way to work. Those model changes are, I actually think both parties in Washington would allow them. But right now, the appetite to pull bloat out of Washington and run it closer to the taxpayer is high. And as a healthcare, I think at 30 years in, I can be a healthcare expert compared to most folks. I feel like they'd give me that money a lickety split.
What do you do about the expansion population? You mentioned that as
that's
an
it.
issue
That you don't need to be a healthcare expert on that. When you push large numbers of able-bodied working people into a program that is designed to operate at below cost, forces providers to operate at below cost, you drive providers out of business, and you end up with small numbers of monopolies. You also end up with no real opportunity to improve because you don't have a working ecosystem. So we obviously, as part of that audit, is who's on Medicaid and why. Why on earth? They've got to get off. Medicaid, many of the rules associated with delivering Medicaid are predicated on the fact that the Medicaid person is flat on their back, is economically destitute, has no chance of doing it. So there's no copays. There's no higher copays if you go to the wrong place. There's no discount if you go to the right place. All of that engagement in personal responsibility that all health plans have, copays, deductibles, are not allowed in Medicaid. But we've got people who are very clearly not flat on their back in the Medicaid system. And then you've got
quite the opposite, yeah.
Quite the opposite. 1 in 3 people. We don't have 1 in 3 Mainers destitute right now by any stretch. So there's just and we've got this subsidized commercial system. Like you can get onto the commercial system for less than Comcast. Mm-hmm. It's not like we're saying go off into the woods alone and treat yourself with Birch Bark. We're saying get on the commercial marketplace, have a plan that allows doctors to make money, that allows plan design to evolve so that it gets better. There are plans in Maine that are offering where the employers are paying less in 2026 than they paid in 2025 in a country that's going the other direction because of innovations in telemedicine and plan design and incentives. And we've taken 1 in every 3 Mainers and said, none of that applies to you. That's crazy. And we've said it as a matter of social justice. There's no social justice in that. That is suffocation of the primary engine of all improvement in this society, which is for free market. So I feel like healthcare is, even though 90% of the dollars come from DC, that Medicaid program has got a huge, huge opportunity. Pull people off so that we don't suffocate the provider community, so that they can get real rates and so that they can innovate, and then change the way we deliver for who's next by going virtual first. And kill the freaking certificate of need law. The idea that we still have that.
You couldn't possibly find a
it's
friendlier
too much.
audience.
We shouldn't even talk about it. It's just like,
yeah, no, I think
it's like the laws. Certificate of need is in there with like, let's have a law where the police can't arrest you if you're caught in the act of a crime, but you identify as homeless. Like that's a real law in Maine. If you said in 2015, we're going to pass a law where the police can't arrest you if you identify as homeless. If you said that in a bar, like that would be grounds for the bartender maybe cutting you off. Like, that'd be crazy, right? But it happened. It's real. It's right now normal in Maine. It's an insane idea. And this idea of certificate of need law, or 1 in 3 Mainers being on Medicaid, even if they're fully employed, these are similarly just cray-cray.
Yeah, well, they are, but I mean, they all kind of come back to the same philosophy that really drove them in the first place, which is this belief that sort of the state solution to something is the preferable one.
Yes.
It's the one that makes you
solve
the problem.
The thing that I'm most excited about changing, and that I think you guys have been a beautiful voice on, is the idea that allowing the state to take something over is a form of virtue signaling.
Yeah.
That's a virtuous,
like we've served the public.
So I believe there are areas where the Republican, I don't know where Republicanism, not sure what the party is or where it is anymore, but is just in a perfect power position to flip the script. We just talked about healthcare. Healthcare has always been a Democrat thing. Republicans won't even want to learn about it. There's a huge opportunity.
Scary to them.
Only market forces have ever generated the innovation that we need, and we are suffocating those forces. And it wouldn't be that much work to unsuffocate them, to get the sort of the furry social justice Birkenstock out of the throat of innovation in healthcare. That is one of ours. Another one is healthcare. Whenever someone says affordable housing, they mean government builds buildings. But now the data is so clear that when the government builds them, they're 50% more expensive. They're not affordable, they're more expensive. And when you then subsidize it to someone, put them in housing as a form of welfare payment, you constrict their geographic mobility. So if you're in a housing project in Portland and a job shows up in Brunswick, for you to move to that job, which would get you off of society's rolls, you'd have to be ready to pay a 300% progressive tax rate on the next incremental dollar, because you're being given $2,000 a month to stay here in this piece of housing. So how could you possibly justify taking that $20 job an hour or 2 hours away? Whereas if you were housed in the free market, there'd be just as likely, maybe more likely, if you think about moving from Portland to Brunswick, affordable housing there. And so you'd be making money doing the rational thing. This idea that we should pay more money per square foot of housing to trap people in poverty, that's now pretty credibly proven to be wrong.
Okay, but I like that you said that, because there's a lot that's been credibly proven wrong that we do.
My favorite one about
right?
this one is Barack Obama himself in law school writes to one of his teachers about the worst thing about our party is the way we handle housing, right? Everybody who's thoughtful on this knows that this is the wrong thing to do. The Democrats running for governor right now are trying to outcompete each other on doing the very Great Society housing program that Lyndon Johnson did that created 5 generations of urban poverty in this country.
Yeah.
Directly. That idea to me is
I flew through LaGuardia, by the way, on my way to Florida, and flying over New York City and just looking at
The projects.
that hellhole
You see
of
them.
Soviet-style like building projects.
Unbelievable. And
was
we're
something
building one
else.
right now in Portland.
I know.
We're like, I've got an idea. Let's do that thing that created multi-generational poverty for a vulnerable population. What? I mean, it's great in a way because it's so it's, you know, we're here talking about the prose of government. Politics is really about the poetry of government. It's how can you make it quick enough for somebody who's really trying to have a life to pay attention to, which is not to say that the listeners don't have a life. But that one's beautiful. There's like a picture of it. You can look at it. You can say, see this thing? It costs 50% more per square foot to make than that one. It took twice as long. It was unpredictable.
And it's
And the
terrible.
result is it's ugly as
Yeah,
butt,
it's-
aside from everything else. But more importantly, it has been shown to concentrate the poverty of those in it. It has been proven to make those people more isolated from society, from inclusion in society. More isolated, not less.
And
like-
yet you keep doing it, though.
Let's run on that.
I mean,
Well,
Harris,
as governor, I think a good question would be then, like, you know, what if Portland says, I don't care what you say. I'm going to keep. I mean,
Yeah.
we've
which they tend to do.
Once I
Right,
win,
you
we're
know?
going to get into. I'm going to come
Are
set
you-
up a
are you
tent in
gonna-
your office here, and we're going to get into the fine print of the general assistance sharing and the education kickback model. Because my argument on several fronts, but on education, on economic growth, on housing, on zoning, is you've got to be a pro-Maine progress player, or you're not in the sharing pool. And so that, I think, is the leverage over Portland.
So you're going to tie revenue sharing, for example,
You bet.
to it?
100%.
Interesting.
And education sharing on results. So Portland is now up to, I believe, 18 culturally specific holidays, but less than 30% of kids can read at the fourth grade level when they get to fourth grade.
They were just bragging about that the other day. They just did the
I know, they loved
State
it.
of the City
Sit on the
schools
land
address.
of the, whatever the lady said there.
Well, she was literally bragging about the holiday thing.
I
can't
love it.
imagine.
As though it was
I
in
love
and of
it.
itself
It's
a
great.
success.
So you can,
How on
and
earth
by
can
the
you
way,
brag about giving more days off of school?
What-
I just
I
don't
don't- yeah.
understand that.
when so few kids can read.
Right.
I mean, it's just, so I'm a big Mississippi guy. Like, I'm going to pick one thing, reading in fourth grade. That's it. I'll do more later, but right now, like when we're bleeding out of every artery, like this is where you start. You stop the bleeding.
Well, at least you're saying reading it all, let alone
Right.
by fourth grade. I mean, the thing.
Well,
that's
the nice
been-
thing about fourth grade is you have a national benchmark there in fourth
Right.
grade.
I know,
you
I
have-
get it. I'm just
yeah.
saying that when you look at, say, Pender Macon's time in office as Commissioner of Education and hear her saying things
Yeah.
like we need to prioritize
New learn-
non-academic learning.
Yeah.
New
Yes.
smart. That's
Yeah.
the
New
term,
smart, right? And you
yeah.
tie
Yeah.
in the social emotional learning stuff and all that jazz. It's not a surprise that the results have gone
It's
precipitously downward.
astonishingly obvious. It's astonishingly obvious. I mean, that you don't need to learn phonics, that you don't need to do the groundwork, that you should guess. This was an accepted educational policy. Take a guess at what you're reading. Sort of hum along with the group instead of learning the component facts. And my favorite was the study that the state just had some contractor put out called Measure What Matters. Have you read this thing?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
Imagine-
because of AI, reading doesn't matter anymore? Because a shoddy crawler of the internet is telling you what to think, you don't need your own logical tools? Allow me to submit that never before in history have people needed their own basic logic building blocks
Oh, amen. Yeah.
than before the large language models got a hold of the internet. I mean, holy cow. That is the most important thing we can do for kids, is make sure they can assemble facts, evidence, warrant, claim. How did they get to these points? And that's, reading is that. It's the ability to break something down into its parts, understand the goofs, and put them together into a larger idea. We must have every Maine kid have that. So I believe with that general assistance and with that education model, we say, look, here's the deal. If you get to 85% of third graders reading at third grade level, shit, I'll give you second grade level. If you can get them to second grade level by third grade. If not, all your money is going into summer school. And if they don't get through summer school reading, they go back to that grade and they stay there. And if you don't play ball,
That's
you don't get the
Mississippi
money.
in a nutshell, yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. And all the other things you want to do, all the other health, all the other staff that you've hired, you can't believe the increase in staffing per capita in Maine in the staffing per kid, with no accountability to reading or math or any core competence that Jefferson would have said was the reason why the state gets involved in this.
And it's not even really teachers either. It's all administrative
Oh
staff.
my Lord, the bloat is unbelievable.
I have to wonder. I feel like,
And it goes to infrastructure, the way that schools are built. I mean, there is an inmates ruling the asylum energy that comes anytime. I'm sure hopefully we'll find out what it's like to have 8 years of Republicans in the House, the Senate, and the Blaine House, so we'll know whether we rot the way they have. But hopefully not. God knows I will do my best to prevent that. But for sure, and obviously we're having this incredible poetry of the fraudulent, Medicaid services providers or whatever. But it's not just there. There is a normalization of bloat and waste and entitlement. And I don't mean societal payment entitlements. I mean entitlement for every school to have an absurd set of modern resources that mean nothing to whether a kid can read.
Don't get me going on iPads and laptops, man.
Or hardwired Cat 5, or I mean, so many things. And so, and this is the general. When people say audit, I don't know what the other candidates mean, but I mean more of a business audit. Like we'll catch the fraud, but the problem is not the fraud; it's the environment that grows fraud like wall mold in every orifice right now. This is the real problem. So you need to go back through, and it's like 5 questions. It's, do we need this at all? Did this get started in reaction to something that's no longer relevant? Would we be better off without this at all? Can we just shut it down? If not, is it duplicated at the county, state, and town, any of those at those levels? So there's environmental permitting that towns have, that counties have, and that the state has. And sometimes builders are having to get the same permit multiple times from different agencies, right? So that's then the third question is it automatable? Could this be, if no, it's not duplicated, and yes, we do need it, can this be an automated algorithm that we run through and gives you an answer immediately, as opposed to dragging on and, Betty's at work from home Wednesday or whatever, and we don't know where she is, and we can't figure out where your ticket is, which the stories I hear from people giving me these incredible stories of trying to find Betty at what cube to figure out where they're, The great Dave Emery, the former congressman from Midcoast, his road got wiped out in the storms 2 years ago in Tennant's Harbor. He's still waiting for a permit to put his road back, 11 houses. I mean, I think they may have just had a guy.
They might have lost the permit, yeah.
I mean, holy cow!
Yeah.
So that's the next one. Is it automated? And then the last test is judgment allowed? Is there an executive who's accountable to that function who can use their own judgment, or is it just a tyranny of process? Like our freaking family services, which there's you can be an absolute hellion criminal sociopath and you do the process and you can be a foster parent. You can have marvelous judgment and have an incredible family and be an incredible pillar of your community. But unless you do the ridiculous process, which includes driving to Augusta and having 100 hours of pointless training so that you could perhaps just take care of your own grandchild, you can't. So there's a lot of opportunity in Augusta for a movement of authority to executives with judgment, which, by the way, attracts better executives. Many things happen as a result that are good.
Yeah, can I stick with education for a minute?
Sure.
Because to tell an anecdote on one of the things that I've observed being very wrong in the system.
Yeah,
you kind of touched on this a little bit, but all of the non-academic aspects to teaching kids today has absolutely overwhelmed any ability to learn anything.
Yes.
So over the weekend, I was taking my daughter back from hockey. She's in 2nd grade, and I took her like Sunday. It was Sunday morning, so it was pretty early, and she was noticing like that it had just gotten light out and whatever. And she started asking me questions about like why like the sun sets and why the sun falls or whatever, which, to be honest with you, are things that I think a 2nd grader should know. Like the Earth spins, and you
me and Johnny had the globe out.
Yeah,
we were turning the globe this morning to find Sarsgaard in Norway, because it was in the newspaper, and it's the closest to Santa, which is at the top where it's closest around the.
Yeah. So I started asking her questions about like, hey, why is it winter out right now instead of summer? Why was I warmer in Florida than I am up here? That kind of, like blank looks, absolutely nothing. And she's really smart. They're just not teaching any of that stuff in her grade level. And so I asked her kind of like cheekily, I was like, what are you learning in school right now or whatever? And she's
Well,
like,
pronouns mostly.
well, yeah, besides that. No, and this is, by the way, the third kid that answered this too. And they're all in different grades, 5th, 4th, and 2nd now. But she said, oh, we're learning about the Wabanaki. And I was like, what do you know about the Wabanaki or whatever? And I learned about basket making and all this other stuff. And I'm like, look, it's wonderful to know a little bit about Native history and where this state was and this country
Well, that's
was.
a statewide mandate too. That's not entirely on the teachers. Honestly.
Well, no, I'm not actually complaining about the teachers. I'm complaining about the curriculum.
I feel bad
the
for them.
curriculum has basically massively overemphasized guilt learning. Is you know how you get like a land statement every time you go to a play now or
I love
like
the
that?
one that was said. The opening of the show. And the guy says, before I begin, we'd like to acknowledge that we are standing in the, State Theater. But it wasn't always the State Theater. It was originally Weinstein's Bagel, owned by Philip and George Weinstein of Weinstein Properties. And before that, it was George Schaller and Ed Weber's parking garage. And before, anyway.
Yeah.
So like, what do you?
How far back do you go?
Yeah, and what was the social order, and what was the economic order, and what were the choices, and what were the other guys like? There's a huge amount of sort of closed-minded virtual signaling noise where the alternatives are never discussed.
But it's all political. Like my wife's a teacher. She did elementary school, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade for years and years and years. She used to teach Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt and those things in 1st grade. Yep. And my daughter can't tell you why the day and the night happens because we're learning about Wabanaki basket making. Like, it's just that you're spending all this time and effort on stuff that has nothing to do with core academic.
And we don't want
achievement.
we don't want to tell. I don't think in any wonderful free autonomous society we want to tell everybody. Like maybe somebody's got a Wabanaki heritage and they're really articulate about it. It's a great way to teach reading. Terrific. But what the state needs to focus on is essential. We are the boundary system. We are the wall. We are not the garden. We are not playing in the garden. We are the wall. This is the minimum essential function and the reason you get other people's tax money flowing into your town is because we need this minimum essential function from you. These children must read. They must know math. They must know some basic building blocks that allow them to engage in society and learn. And while everything else that we hear about probably has a wonderful backstory and probably has examples where it is used beautifully, and when I'm governor, will be used beautifully by those who can also have already taught their kids to read in many interesting ways, but that we death march people against these virtue signaling education things, that there is any requirement other than the basic logical building blocks is a massive sort of dereliction of duty and a massive case of hubris, of like absurd excess pride of being right by the state that it has no business having.
So you've talked about the importance of reforming healthcare, taxes, housing, all very big issues in the state. But I think there is one that you haven't yet touched on, which is on everyone's mind, possibly the biggest issue right now, or at least the one that's really ballooning the most, which is energy prices.
I just got another notice, by the way. It's going up again, so I'm excited.
It always takes my breath away when you start to go through the self-inflicted wounds. Like, there's probably a lot of innovation and policy we'll have to do, but we stand here in a state that requires the grid to pay 4x, 5x their lowest price of power as a matter of virtue signaling. Like that you have to buy power from any fool who has 2 solar panels at wholesale rates, which is 4x what you would pay, Seabrook, who we pay, 6 cents or whatever for their electricity.
So you're referencing net energy billing.
Yeah, net energy billing. But I mean, the idea of underwriting offshore wind, which is well established to be 4x at scale, the cost. People say, in Europe, and they pay 4 times as much and they have no industrial base. And Germany is coming to an end as we know it. Like, that's not a good idea. we can generate really low cost. We are a hydropower mecca here at Quebec and in Maine. And instead, we are, again, virtually signaling our way out of hydropower. That blows my mind. Tidal power, geothermal power, small modular nuclear power. All of these things have been suffocated, actively suffocated by a virtue signaling state government that says this is the only thing that counts as power. This is the only thing you're allowed to have. It's like the buses. You can only have these ridiculous giant buses with 3 people on them, or it's not a bus. There's example after example of this absurd self-assurance that the 9 ideas that a bunch of wonks in Augusta, or that the friends of the wonks in Washington, or whatever it is, came up with are the only way to do something in a society whose entire success comes from a diverse panoply of ideas is insane. So first thing you got to do is immediately roll back everything that where the state actively interferes to create higher cost. And it's a lot. The state, and it's worth saying multiple times, in Maine, the state actively interferes to make the cost of housing higher than it would be if the state did nothing. In Maine, the state actively interferes to make the cost of electricity higher than it would be if it did nothing. So step 1 for the new governor, stop
interfering.
Actively interfering to cause harm, right? And that does a lot of things. 1, you get an economic relief, but 2, you get a social and political relief. I don't have to fake it anymore, right? Now you can begin laying the groundwork. Hey, which towns want to get extra general assistance sharing? Go pre-permit a geothermal plant, a small modular nuclear plant. Any towns that pre-permit these things, an aquaculture, take everything that takes 20 years and is inconsistent to get permission on in Maine. If you want to right now get together as a town council and pre-permit any of these, have a building code. This is the code. If you come here, you do this, you're allowed. Nope. You can do it by right. You get more. You get more general assistance. And for those of you who forbid everything, you get none. There's a lot we can do to get the ball rolling going forward just by pre-permitting the things that people shy away from Maine for permitting reasons. And the most famous of which, of course, is our corridor up to, it was for Massachusetts, but the idea that a state could give you permission, pass a law, sign a bill, give you a permit, and then you go spend money, and then they say, actually, no. That's terrifying. For any business person looking at this state, you mean I could go through everything, do everything right, get permission, and then get wiped out later? Retroactively? I could be willing to build a 3,000-seat concert venue, get permission, do everything right, and then suddenly the city is going to pass a moratorium on all 3,500-seat venues, right? Like clearly, like Banana Republic type behavior. A moratorium on all power corridors, a moratorium on all fish farms, pre-permitted, already built, totally green, greens the entire food chain of the United States food supply chain. These are real examples on our wall of shame right now in the Bush campaign that are active interference by the state after somebody's done everything right. We can do the opposite. Once we clear those out, we can now say, we're going to pre-permit. We're going to pre-enable these corridors so that people can come here not worried that they'll be sucker punched after they put money to work. And we will end up with a lot more more electrical supply. And that will bring our prices down. That's how that works.
Well, more electric supply of the right type, right? Isn't that, you mentioned virtue signaling. It's like we have decided that these are the appropriate and the proper things to invest your money in.
The arrogance of that is beyond.
Well, isn't it just classic socialism? I mean, it's like central planning. It's what
except
people
for,
in the bureaucracy
except for one
think.
thing. In socialism, you have a fair amount of benefit to the working class. Like, these are policies that absolutely suffocate the working class. And the people who pass them in the name of socialism are info elites whose power consumption is to run their MacBook Pro. I mean, this is much worse than socialism. This is elite virtue signaling masquerading as socialism. This is really nasty pseudo-intellectual elitism that is, I mean, Karl Marx would blush. Can we take 1 minute to add a new topic? One of the things that's going on right now is at the town level is a property tax explosion. And part of that is that there's no business revenue going into the town coffers because we suffocate businesses at the state level. So that is related. But there's also a duplication of services going on in Maine that is quite significant for a state this small. And it seems to me that one policy area that you guys may even want to like open up a thread on is, so for example, there are, I think it was like 26 different police record management systems in Maine. In a state of 1.3 million people, you could probably have one, right? And then it's at the town level. So, but the state has to have one for the state police, right? In fact, if you look at it, the vast majority of the land mass of Maine, the state is the town office. So the state actually has to have the ability to sell a driver's license. I mean, a license plate and a building permit and do police record keeping and all of the functions that each town is then duplicating, the state has to do. So one area, I think, when you do this audit, when I remember the second question was, is this duplicated? Is should the state actually, it already has one, but should it stand up a wicked good one? Should the state have an always on, real time, costless, low friction town office with an always on, by the cop, by the month police record keeping system with a license plate vending, with permits, with property tax assessment, every function.
Basic government services.
Super modern.
Yeah.
Super modern. And then each town can say, we like Mean Martha, who only takes paper checks between 8 and 11 a.m. on Tuesdays. And so we don't want that. Great, no problem. But a policy area that I think we should talk more about is where can the state be of service to towns to get their costs and bureaucracies down? So anyway, that's a topic that I haven't heard discussed.
Well, it's an efficiency argument.
It's an
That's
efficiency.
what you're talking about.
And so
right?
when you get to the audit, that'll be one of the things that come out. Hey, look at this.
Well, isn't one of the challenges of that though? I mean, you mentioned that every town sort of makes their own decisions on this.
Yep.
That is actually something that you see on a lot of different areas, right? Is that you have home rule for towns, and
Yes.
so they've decided we want to manage this locally. Schools are like that, right? I mean,
Yep.
why do we have so many superintendents, right? It's because every town wants their own
Right.
control over their school system and whatnot, and I get why they do.
Yep.
But it comes at a cost.
It does.
It comes at a
real
massive
dollar
cost.
cost. That's right.
Yeah.
So one of the things the state government can do is say, look, superintendent is not principal. It's a bureaucratic administrative function. Do you really want like a different superintendent to setting up at 4 a.m. to decide should the school buses roll? Is it snowy enough or whatever? Like there's a lot of stuff that is duplicated that makes no sense. And for sure, the superintendent function would be in that file. But I think a topic for you guys, I'm a big fan, so I'm always giving you ideas of your work, but is automation versus duplication versus judgment. Those are three piles that can be refactored at the town and county and state level.
No, we have a suggestion box, so great.
There it is.
I love it.
I'm using my airtime to drop something in the suggestion box.
Well, as we wrap things up here, I want to do a couple things before we get out of here. The first one is to talk a bit about all of these ideas that we've been talking about so far in comparison to the rest of your field. Because, again, I said this, it's sort of at the outset, but one of the services we can offer people is to allow you to maybe talk about why you're the choice, why you're the one that really deserves to be ultimately voted for. So you have 8 other competitors that are in this race, as far as I know it. And I think that's it. I think there's no more people that are jumping in. But as you look around the field and then you look at yourself, how do you differentiate? What do you see as the advantage of you as the candidate? Why should people pick you? I mean,
so here's what I think. In business, there's this idea of a competitive advantage, but then there's a power position. And a power position is something that even on your bad day, you have it and they just don't. Right? You can say, my processor is faster than yours. But another one is I find 20% patients that you just don't have, or whatever. So my power positions, the things that I think are unique to me in Maine are, I am the only candidate running in either party who has brought 1,000 new careers to Maine. And that was a complicated set of selling and believing and lobbying that went on for over a decade to make that happen. And the knowledge that comes from that, but also the proof of passion for Maine, belief in Maine, in the economic superpower that it's destined to be, is unique to me. I'm the only guy. A second one is I'm the only guy who has taken on an overregulated industry sector that has state and local and federal barriers to new innovation and succeeded. And Augusta is a state, local, federal barrier mecca. Everything has got a state and a federal and a local barrier. And so the ability to look at my track record in healthcare, starting in women's health and then running all the way through, go all the way back to starting in paramedicine, going all the way through, that is something that you have a track record on me, and you have an assertively zero on all of the other candidates, again, in both party binary. And then the last one, I don't know if it's not my favorite, but it's true. I've been canceled and I'm not afraid anymore. There is nothing that you can take from me or threaten me with. And that's a unique experience, to be not just canceled like by your friends. In fact, luckily I figured out who my friends are because they didn't cancel me, but nationally. And then to build back from that, to know that there's nothing that anyone will ever dig up or say or reveal that will alter my course, and that someone who resists it, if a union or a entrenched group that doesn't like this progress threatens me, there's nothing to come get. So those are three things that are unique about me. I also think I'm smart. I also think I care. I also think being a veteran is we are the number one percentage-wise contributor to the armed forces in the country. And I think that the percentage of Mainers that trust a veteran more than someone who isn't is useful. Again, I think there's maybe one other veteran running, but not a person who signed up for a combat MOS. But those three, I think, are the things that make me unique.
Well, as we wrap up here and just kind of finalize, I know that you and I were talking before we started here about culture. You had mentioned that.
Good one to end on.
As a good place to end,
right.
Perhaps.
Yes.
That's a big word, throw it around a lot for a lot of different reasons here. But when you maybe back way up and look at the state and look at the government and how we approach everything that we do here, I think one way you might describe some of the problems that you see is a broken culture. So talk to me a little bit about your view on this.
Great one to end on, Matt. I love
maybe
that.
Laying the plane. Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, let's define culture. Right? I'm defining it in one particular way, which is the set of underlying unconscious assumptions that employees share about how to get ahead. That's really, if you want to use a really good measuring stick, hey, do I go to the pizza party, or not? Oh, everyone goes because, that's where we get ahead. Or no one goes, Do I wear my badge prominently, or do I put it in my pocket? It's not that big a deal. Oh, I'm compliant. We're a compliance culture. I wear my badge. These are the kinds of things that make up. And what's interesting about culture is it's been well proven that it is the number one obligation of leadership, but it is also the thing that leaders have the least direct control over it. You have to throw yourself at it all day, but there's no button you could press. There's no model you can build. There's no policy you can make. It's the accumulation of the policies you make, how you live them, what happens in the world, and all these people watching. Oh, he made the policy. Gavin Newsom eating at the French Laundry
in COVID,
while he has the most aggressive shutdowns. That created a culture, right?
Yeah.
So that's the most important thing a governor can bring. And right now, the underlying assumptions in Maine state government are almost exactly the opposite of, I think, what is needed. In that virtue signaling around environmentalism and social justice are the unconscious assumed way of getting ahead. If somebody gives you an application for a permit to put up something solar and another application for a permit to put up something carbon powered, there's no policy or law, but it is very easily documented that the solar one goes right through and the carbon one gets hung up. And that's because there's a culture there. There is a culture that there is it is considered malpractice for a state or government official to expect effort or responsibility from a beneficiary of services. There is no expectation of grace or expectation of effort. That is considered antisocial justice to assume that person. And again, I think the biggest opportunity for the next governor of Maine is to exactly flip that. Is to say, if you are trying to grow this economy, I believe somewhere in my animal brain that if I help you, I'll get ahead as a state worker. And if you are trying to use services that are paid for by other people's tax dollars, again, a state worker should have the feeling that if I expect grace from you, if I expect effort from you, I'll get ahead. And if I don't, I won't. It's the exact opposite of what we do today, and it can be done. And you don't need a bill to be passed. There's teachable moments. There's signals that you can do. Just study the percentage of people arrested in Portland for vagrancy that have out-of-state licenses. Just study the percentage of people who are arrested multiple times and never asked to spend a night in jail. Just study the destiny of every small business who comes to the state for something that needs to come to the state for something. What happened? Know it all day long. The state does not know the status of its environmental permits, of its small business permits. This is a state with 137,000 registered small businesses, the second highest ratio of people to small businesses in the country after Florida, and we act like it's low-level sin to be in business. That is a cultural signaling opportunity that is probably the most important job of the next governor, is set the cultural tone.
I remember when Mitch Daniels was governor of Indiana, he had a similar message oftentimes, and he talked about like government turning into customer service.
Yes.
And you would spend your time as a government employee, whatever,
Yep.
ensuring that every interaction that somebody had with you was one of a customer which was being served by you,
100%,
which is 100% different than it used to be.
Watch my podcast with Mitch Daniels on this. This is exactly what I'm talking about. And by the way, Paula Page had a start on this. There was I'm a small business friendly town, a decal that you could get during the LePage administration. There was the beginnings of this thinking, but to do it right, it needs intense, continuous, relentless attention, systems, measures, automations, doing the reporting, the data analysis that has been blocked, as you guys have demonstrated, trying to get some of these data from the state. You flip that script and lots of stuff starts happening.
Yeah. Well, talking about culture on the day after we had the Patriots winning a playoff game for the first time in five years makes me a happy guy. So I think that's maybe a perfect place to end. So Jonathan Bush, we really appreciate you spending some time with us. Obviously, we can keep going for like 3 hours.
No, I loved it.
I think we've got a good time here for about an hour.
I think we left most stones turned.
We did indeed, but I'm sure the first of many conversations. So I know you have a lot of door knocking to do and some debates to prep for and all that fun stuff. So
what are we at? 900? Let's see. We're 95 signatures down, 1,950 to go.
Well, you have a little time to get them, which is good.
We got time.
So,
we've only gone out once, but we'll be going out tonight. Luckily, I've got cute kids and a puppy, so I expect to get a lot of signatures.
Yeah, it does help a lot. Well, we appreciate your time, and I'm sure it's the first of many conversations, so we'll have more in the future, but appreciate you spending some time with us in the Pine Tree Pulse, and we'll talk again soon.
Looking forward to it. Thanks you, guys.
So
This has been Pine Tree Pulse, disrupting the Maine political machine, one podcast at a time. Visit MainePolicy.org to learn more, or follow the Maine Policy Institute on social media. Thanks for listening, and make sure to join us again next time.